Negro Leagues baseball was so popular that black churches would move their service time up an hour so fans could go to the game. If you know anything about the black church, you don't mess with service time.
There were African American professional ball players in the 19th century.
But segregation starts to tighten its hold.
Well, what do you do?
We can do this on our own.
A few entrepreneurs see that a black club can be a successful business.
Rube Foster.
Light years ahead of his time.
Effa Manley.
The first lady of black baseball.
Negro Leagues players made the game more up-tempo, bunt and run.
Base stealing. These incredibly acrobatic catches.
The major leaguers would say that the Negro Leagues didn't play the game the right way. Really, that was saying they didn't play the game the white way. Wherever you had successful black baseball, you typically had thriving black economies.
You have vendors and you have advertising. You know, people were making money from it.
But integration was going to kill their businesses.
It was good morally, but that progress came at a cost.
White fans saw a kind of baseball they had never seen before.
The great ball players of the leagues.
Jackie Robinson.
Buck Leonard.
Satchel, Paige.
Willie Mays.
Cool Papa Bell.
Hank Aaron.
Oscar Charleston.
Joshua Gibson
Would transform the game.
They are a part of a movement. Before we coined the term civil rights movement.
Man, they didn't care about making no history. They just wanted to play ball. But the pride, the passion, the courage in the face of adversity, that's the real story.
Sam Pollard once again.
What's up, man? What's up, man?
This is the only way we'll get together and I'll see you is if you make a documentary. It's the only time I get this. How you been?
Pretty good, man.
What are you doing down there?
In Baltimore, I'm living. I moved to Baltimore.
You're in Baltimore?
Yeah,
When did that happen?
about a year ago.
Oh, how's that?
Pretty good. You know, we bought a condo down here,
Mm-hmm.
and Joyce and I moved down a year ago, and you know, sort of, I would say, sort of semi-retired.
Does that mean you only make 2 films a year?
Instead of 20, I'm doing 15.
I know. It's good well, it's good to see you. I also moved in as well.
Where you living now?
I'm north of the city in the Hudson Valley area.
Okay. How's your son, man?
He's good. He just brought him to the airport. And by the way, I drove on the Jackie Robinson Parkway. I don't know. It's a connection. Yeah. So I put him on a plane. Let's see, today is Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I put him on a plane Wednesday night for Nepal.
What?
Yeah. He's
How old is he?
19.
Oh, he's
And did I ever introduce you?
Yeah, years ago.
Oh, at the festival.
Remember up in Saga, what's it called? Upstate New York?
Yeah. At the Woodstock Film Festival, probably, right?
Yeah. He came to the restaurant,
right.
a little coffee shop. Yeah, sure. He was
In Rosendale.
Yeah, he was like, what, 12 or 13 at the time or something? Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, 2 trains running.
Yeah,
And
cool.
something like that. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. Well, that was a while ago, man. He's a young guy. He's a man. He's
Is he going to college? Where's he going?
Yeah, he's taking a gap year. So we're figuring that out. So then in the meantime, he worked this year and he's now in Nepal for a month. And then, we'll figure out the college thing next. He was a little bit hesitant to start college so soon, so we're trying to figure it out with him.
So what kind of gig is he doing in Nepal?
It's a program called Where There Be Dragons, and it's like, a group where they embed they're in the Kathmandu Valley, and it's an educational, but also, I guess you could call it maybe social and anthropological type of visit, I guess, on some level, where they they learn about the culture there and they kind of embed with it. They stay with families there, and then there's a spiritual side of it where they go off to some temples and they do meditation and they do
nice.
I mean, it should be hopefully really kind of,
It'll be eye-opener.
Yeah, and a boost to his confidence in a way.
Yeah. I'm working on a doc about Nepal and the first group of Black African American mountain climbers, not African American, Black mountain climbers in Nepal.
Is that right?
Will Smith's company. Yeah, it's supposed to come out next year.
Wow. Well, semi-retirement does you well, it appears.
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, regardless, I guess I am just happy for the occasion of seeing the league and to once again be sitting with you. It's a little bit different than the first time I remember sitting across the desk with you.
At NYU. I retired.
At NYU.
I retired, Adam.
You did? You left NYU?
Yep, last year.
A lot of changes.
I moved out of, I retired from NYU and I left New York.
Okay. It's a lot of changes.
A lot of changes, man. A lot of changes.
But this documentary, The League, is still, it's like, it just shows you don't have to necessarily be in the city of New York to make a documentary like The League, which is being distributed by Magnolia. It's going to be in AMC Theaters. I'm just getting this out of the way from the top, starting July 7th across the country. And then it's going to be available digitally a week later on the 14th.
Yep, that's exactly right. You got it all right.
There's so much to talk about in this thing. Is first thing that kind of occurred to me is, why don't most people of paler complexion, maybe even African American people, not know that there was a Negro League?
Well, it's the same thing that you go through all the time. I mean, this notion of what American history is, it's always been calibrated to be about white people. So when if it's not about white people, then most people, unless you're within that small community, don't know about it. And that's why. I mean, it's simple as that, Adam. I mean, it's the same thing that one of the reasons that I do the films I do, to make sure people know that there's other parts of American history, particularly African American history, that's American history. So, that's why they don't know much about it. And we live in a time too, we live in a world where most people, not only young people, most people don't reflect back. Everything is projected forward. We live at this whole sort of speed. So, I mean, even if you ask people about things from, it's like when I did the Arthur Ashe film, and Black people, white people, some of them didn't even know who Arthur Ashe was. So it's always this part of this notion that people don't really tend to have a desire to know the past.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And I mean, I thought you were going to, I agree with you. And but I thought you were going to say, like, now more than ever, as for Black history in this, seems to be as big a threat to politicians, certain percentage of the population of this country than ever. So what's the best thing to do is to erase it entirely.
Well, listen, when someone like DeSantis and other people talk about this notion of things, you don't have to be woke, this is not new stuff, Adam. This is not, that kind of attitude and philosophy is not new in America. I mean, go back, think of it this way. Think of J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. I mean, they were terrified of Dr. King. They were terrified of Marcus Garvey. They were terrified of Malcolm X. Anything that sort of challenges what's considered the American status quo is something that needs to be sort of like, oh, you can't talk about that. That shouldn't exist. These people are dangerous. It's that same philosophy, man. There's nothing new about America. It's all the same, man. It's a continuation. I mean, the sad thing for me, as a man of the age of 73, is, you just get so fucking cynical and frustrated that this shit continues and continues and continues and continues. So the reality of life is like for every 2 steps forward, you got to take 2 steps back. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. That's not a good sign when it's the exact same amount of distance. I thought maybe you were going to say 1 step back, but it does kind of feel these days like 3 steps back, actually.
Exactly.
In some spots. Yeah.
It just, you just, it's like the other day when the media was pulled out the audio tapes of Trump talking about showing those documents. Now, people on CNN and MSNBC are making a big thing about it. But I turned to my wife, Adam, and said, will this really have any impact? I mean, nothing that Trump has said on audio, going back to grabbing a woman's you-know-what, has had any impact on that fucking guy.
The only difference is he is basically blatant about it, whereas other people try to zhuzh it up a little bit to make it more palatable for the public,
he's
right?
Blatant. He's just blatant. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He has no rules. Everything is Trump rules, so, but it's not, but you think about historically in America, when I was working on this other documentary, I have another documentary that I co-produced with Douglas Blackman, who I did 12 Slavery by Another Name with. That's going to premiere on the American Experience, called The Harvest. And it's about him as a young white kid being part of that group of white kids in 1969, 1970, that were part of the first group of integrating public schools in Leland, Mississippi. And there's a sequence in that film in 1954, when Brown versus the Board of Education was ruled, that the schools had to be integrated at all deliberate speed, right? All deliberate speed. And what did it take? It took almost 15 years before schools really started to get integrated in the South, right? And after that ruling happened, with Thurgood Marshall was the leading, lawyer on the case, you cut to some footage of some Southern senator, and some Southern white people saying, Black people shouldn't be in schools with us because they're not intelligent enough. Well, here we are, man. That's 1955. Here we are in 2023. You're hearing that same kind of shit today. So America is still, it's not to say there hasn't been progress, but there's still these people out there saying the same craziness, Adam.
Well, maybe it's a shrinking group, but they're just getting louder with the, like at a pace of their decreasing numbers. I'm only saying that because it's going to be at some point relatively soon that all minorities will create a majority, right? We know that as fact, and that's a great threat to you. Yeah, it's already too late. We're just not, we just didn't do enough business in the bed with. So there seems to be kind of a desperation to it, So that's the only thing I could say, which even though we're going through a rather bleak period, and then maybe you think it's been ongoing bleak for since.
Well, I do.
Yeah, sure, I get it. But it seems like, at a certain point, you're not going to be able to really hide the history anymore.
Well, let's see, man.
We'll see how much damage is done in the meantime, though. A lot of damage can be done.
Exactly.
All right. So getting down to more specifics about the and by the way, who does this wonderful narration of the film? The voiceover is beautiful. Beautiful work. Who's that?
I don't know. Some guy, man, they found in the hinterlands. They said, we need somebody to be Bob Marley. Let's get that guy.
You were very good. Have you done it before and I've just forgotten?
No, I was, normally when I'm doing these docs and there's either some kind of voiceover or some kind of narration, I do the scratch tracks, right?
Oh,
I
okay.
do the initial scratch track. So what happened in this particular case, Adam, one of the executives, a couple of the executives, when they heard my voice in the first rough cut, they said, "Sam, you got a really good voice.
You do.
Maybe you should be Bob Motley." And I quickly poo-poo said, no. We need to get someone, who's got more of a name, more of a celebrity. And Adam, we reached out to some people. We reached out to Dave Winfield and some others. But there were some money demands that seemed to be exorbitant for our executives. So finally they came back to me and said, "Would you really do this voiceover?" Because I had been reluctant. So I said, "Okay, I thought about it for a few days. I finally said, okay, I'll do it." And so I went into a studio here in Baltimore and redid it all and tried to be as articulate as possible.
Yeah.
And redid it,
Was it a big challenge using a different set of muscles for you, right?
Well, you had to concentrate. I couldn't slur all my words like I normally do.
I know. For those listening, this is actually the fourth time we've been doing this. Sam and I have been doing this interview because of that reason. I had to have him keep reading it. I enjoyed it. So, and of course, because it's also, I probably, even though I love history, I'm also probably, just not that caught up, and I'm a baseball fan, but I'm not like a deep baseball. So even though, of course, I know who Satchel Paige is, and of course, Jackie Robinson, and even I've heard the name Buck O'Neill, but I didn't realize that they had started in this Negro League before.
Well, here's the same for me. I mean, here, think of it. I grew up in the 60s, right, Adam? I was in 1964 a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan because my dad.
Your dad was a fan? Yeah.
So I loved Kurt Flood and Lou Brock and Bill White, and even Joe Torre and Tim McCarver from that team, and Bob Gibson. I love that team. Yeah. And I knew, like you, I only knew a little bit. I knew about Jackie Robinson because we all knew Jackie Robinson integrated Major League Baseball. And I knew about Satchel Paige and I knew about Josh Gibson. But did I know in detail about the whole evolution of the Negro Leagues? No, I didn't really know about it. I knew it was a Negro League, but I didn't know the evolution of it. I know about Rube Foster, and I didn't know about some of these other great players like, Buck O'Neill and Buck Leonard and Cool Papa Bell. So for me, as you know, as a documentarian / historian, there's an opportunity to really dig into this material, get to know these characters.
Pretty right. It's kind of a real gift.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, talk a little bit more about Rube Foster. What was his his contribution? Because
he's the godfather of Negro League baseball. Here was a guy who, in the early 20th century, was considered a phenomenal pitcher, and so phenomenal that he taught the screwball to Christy Mathewson. Right. He also then became a manager of the team that he was on pitching for, and then he went on and became an owner of the team, part owner of the team. But then by 1920, this guy decided, why don't we bring all these Negro League teams of these different owners, some were black, some were white, and start a league. So in 1920, in Kansas City, Missouri, he brought all of them together in the office, and they put together the Negro National League. Now, a few years later, another group of guys put together the colored, Negro Leagues. So they were able to play each other in the World Series in 1924. Right, like the
Western or in the American leagues.
Like the American and National Leagues.
National, right?
But, this guy started something that was fantastic. And then after his demise and the league sort of fell apart, Gus Greenlee and Posey in Pittsburgh, they put together another new Negro League team, sequence of teams. And they had what's called the East-West Classic, which was sort of like the All-Star game. And that's when that's probably when I knew about the Negro Leagues, because then I knew that's when Satchel Paige is introduced and Josh Gibson is introduced to the world and Cool Papa Bell. So I knew about those players as a young man. But by the 40s, there were teams like the Kansas City Monarchs and the Newark Eagles, all these Philadelphia Stars, all these different Negro League teams around the country. And the last major series, 46, when the Newark Eagles beat the Kansas City Monarchs, was the same year that Jackie got signed, to play the minor leagues of Major League Baseball. Then 47, he went to the Brooklyn Dodgers. So, and him going to the Brooklyn Dodgers, it was sort of like a clarion call. And all of a sudden, these Major League owners, white owners, started to go to all these Negro League teams to find players of the stature or even better players than Jackie was. I mean, the Dodgers signed Don Newcomb, they signed Roy Campanella, the Cleveland Indians signed Larry Doby, signed Satchel Paige. Later on, the New York Giants signed Monty Irvin and Willie Mays. The Milwaukee Braves signed Hank Aaron. The Chicago Cubs signed Ernie Banks. I mean, all of a sudden, by the late 40s, early 50s, the Negro League teams were being pilfered, man. Players were gone over to the major leagues.
It was in a way the beginning of the end. Yeah,
it was the beginning of the end for the Negro Leagues.
Right.
And by 1960, the Negro Leagues were defunct.
And okay, so it's tricky conversation because I want to talk about they began because
segregation.
So, and then and they were a threat, right? In a number of ways, and white ball players didn't want to feel like they were inferior to
That's
Negro.
Exactly right.
Right. So, but at some point or other, I'm assuming with the integration of Jackie Robinson, the owners started seeing dollar signs in their eyes, right? They started seeing. I mean, it's certainly not out of from their heart. It's usually
it's all about
economics.
Money. It's all about money and economics. Exactly.
So why wasn't that? Why didn't they see? It just had to take time for things to kind of.
It had to take time.
Yeah.
It had to take time. It had to sort of grow. Where somebody in the major league says, "Well, that's going to bring in a different kind of audience. That's going to bring in more money to the stadium." And these guys were businessmen. They weren't altruistic in saying, "Oh, we want to integrate Major League Baseball because that's the right thing to do." No, it's about money. Always about money. And you could tell. I mean, this is the other story I didn't know when I was doing this film, that Branch Rickey didn't feel it necessary to compensate the Black owners of these teams that he was taking players from. He didn't compensate the Baltimore Elite Giants for signing Roy Campanella. He didn't compensate Effa Manley and the Newark Eagles for signing Don Newcomb. He didn't compensate the owners of the Kansas City Monarchs for signing Jackie Robinson. And these players obviously didn't, I mean, unless I hear something different or read something different, they didn't seem to fight it. They signed,
Well, so is it a double-edged sword at the end of the day in terms of the ending of the Negro Leagues, in the sense that integration is a good thing, but also being able to have something that is a reflection of your culture in such an amazing way, like a Negro League, that is also a great thing to have. So it's kind of.
It is a double-edged sword. And that's the thing that I always think is great to know. On the one hand, I mean,
things aren't so cut and dry.
When I learned about Jackie Robinson integrating the major leagues back in 1964, 1965, when I was 14, 15 years old, I didn't know the downside of him joining the Major League Baseball. There's always consequences to what's done. And part of what I like to do with these docs, and this, I like people to see there's consequences. It's not always one way, it's not so black and white. And that's the story you learn here, that, on the one hand, it was great because integration was important, so we're not treated as second-class citizens. But on the other hand, what did it do to communities that had been self-contained and surviving and thriving, when integration took hold?
Sam Pollard is a documentary filmmaker, an editor, producer, and co-host of the Filmwax podcast, apparently. Been on many times. But I always look forward to that.
It's always a pleasure hanging out with you, Adam.
Well, in person, I mean, I have some questions about moving to Baltimore. I've got family there. And
I guess that'll be for another time.
Yeah, we'll do that another time. And I used to attend the Maryland Film Festival, a great festival. I don't know haven't been there in a couple of years now, but I used to enjoy that very much. So, good luck with this your new home.
Thank you very much.
And we'll do this again for one of the next projects you've already mentioned in your semi-retirement. The league again is exclusively in AMC Theaters starting July 7th, and will be available on digital platforms as of the 14th of July. Have a great 4th of July. Celebrating
Thank you. You too, man.
the birthday
Enjoy
of this wonderful country and its history.
It's wonderfully complicated. It's wonderfully complicated.
Wonderfully complicated checkered history. Exactly. Yeah. And hopefully, I'm holding on to a little bit of hope. That's all. I don't know.
That's all you can do, man.
That's all you can do. That's right. Thanks,
All
Sam.
right.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Adam. Be good.
You too. Have a good one.
Bye.